The following program is being presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed are not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.
Welcome to Common Sense. Common Sense program is a series of shows featuring interviews with very interesting people. These interviews will help us to learn in a clear, concise, and direct way who these folks are, what they do, and what makes sense to them and what doesn't. I'm Rudy Breglia, and today I'll be interviewing the learned author, entrepreneur, Illyria's Magistrate, Giovanna Bremke, who is currently a candidate for the position of Court of Common Pleas Judge in Lorain County. Thank you for your service, Giovanna, and welcome to Common Sense.
Thank you for having me.
Okay. Why don't you start us off by giving some background about you, where you were born, where you've lived, that kind of information.
Sure. So I grew up in Avon, not far from Avon Lake here. I spent most of my childhood in Avon, and I went to Avon schools.
Okay.
My mother's Leslie Scaletta. She was a school teacher in Avon for many years. And my father, Joe Scaletta, was a home builder, also in Avon. He built Avonbury Lakes, which is next to Avon Commons.
Okay.
Devonshire Meadows, which is across from Avon Commons, and a few various developments elsewhere in North Ridgeville and other communities. But I spent a lot of my early childhood in those developments at a very young age, learning the value of hard work and human interaction. I would pull weeds and sweep garages of his model homes. And when, people were walking by, I would, speak with them. And as I got older, I continued to work for, my father's business. And I eventually went on to graduate from Magnificat High School.
Okay.
And then I went to University of Cincinnati for a business degree. Mm-hmm. But at the time, the market was, I had a lifelong dream of being in my father's business. My siblings also worked for the family business. But at the time, the market had taken a downturn. And simultaneously, my dad was diagnosed with terminal cancer.
Oh,
so,
too bad.
I sort of pivoted to law. He said, look, I don't know, the future of the family business, but we can always use a lawyer, right? So,
okay.
And we always kind of joke in the law, if you're, a child that's pretty boisterous, then people say, hey, you should you should be a lawyer. So that must have been me. And I went on to law school and graduated from Cleveland State, and I practiced here in Lorain County ever since.
Okay. Your dad must be pretty proud of you.
Yes. I'd like to think so.
Okay. Tell us about the steps you've taken in your career.
So, again, I graduated from University of Cincinnati with a business degree, business and finance. I went on to law school. And after law school, I did work for a local firm in North Olmsted. A gentleman by the name of John Duffy and Brian Darling had a firm there. I worked for them for a short period of time, and then I started my own practice. And I'd worked for that firm even in law school, and we handled pretty much every matter. And it was a good exposure to me to get a good
general law.
And I am running for Judge of Common Pleas, which handles civil and criminal matters. So it's important to have that mix. I've also practiced in probate court. So these are things that I've done, throughout my over 10 years of practice. And just recently, I became a magistrate about a little over a year ago in the Illyria Municipal Court. Now, Avon Lake's Judge Manning, was the magistrate there, and in preparation for perhaps, her leaving to take the bench, and she did. they brought me on as
I
magistrate.
got you.
So.
I got you. Did you have a role model for this career in law that you followed?
Well,
I know you got advice from your dad.
I would say my role model is my dad. He wasn't a lawyer. I'm a first generation lawyer. In fact, when I went to law school, I was very green as to the law and didn't know a whole lot. But my dad, was a very hard worker. He's since passed, but everyone who I run into doesn't have a bad thing to say about him. He had a great personality and ability to network, and I like to think that I got some of those qualities. Although I know I'll never be as great as him, he was definitely my role model.
Okay. What are your responsibilities as president of the Lorain County Bar Association?
Sure. So I've been involved with the Bar Association since I graduated law school. Very early on, another woman attorney said, "Hey, we have this women's law section of the Bar Association. You should join." And I did. I went to that meeting, and I really never looked back. I joined a lot of the committees, and eventually got on the executive board and worked my way through to being the current president of the Bar Association. We put on educational seminars for attorneys, and we work with the executive board for that. We have a foundation that we raise money for. We just did that. And overall, we're support for the community. Throughout my time on the Bar Association, we've had rate increases for our attorneys that take appointed cases, and which helps get better representation for people who can't afford it.
Understand. Tell us about your appointment to the Lorain Medina Community-based Correctional Facility Board.
Sure. So I do sit. Judge Chris Cook appointed me to the Lorain Medina CBCF. It is a facility that's a locked facility similar to a jail, but it also does provide vocational training and treatment for individuals who are there.
Good.
It's usually, about a 5 to 6 month program. And again, I have an interest in, reducing recidivism, meaning the cycle of repeat offenders.
Yep.
That vocational training and that treatment is key to doing that. So, and my passion for that sort of led me to that board. And it's a large facility based mainly on state and federal funding, but it's been a good experience.
Okay. What is a magistrate?
Sure. So again, I sit as magistrate in the Elyria Municipal Court. Magistrates are similar to judges, although we don't have the same role as judges. Number one, we're appointed as opposed to elected, and ultimately the judges have to make the final call. So I have presided over civil, criminal, and traffic cases as a magistrate. And ultimately, I author a decision that a judge will either sign or disagree with. And it adds sort of another layer in the fact that people can object to that decision to the judge. But very similar authorities as a judge.
Okay. What was the most surprising aspect of being a magistrate?
Well, I'll tell you what surprised me, because again, I was used to being in front of magistrates and judges, and it surprised me that, like I said, I have to author opinions. I don't just sit there and make the decision as the trial's going. So I usually I take notes and I go back to my desk and I review everything. And what surprised me the most is sometimes what I was thinking is not necessarily what supports the law, and we take an oath to follow the law. So, what my instinct is, even though I've practiced in this area for a good deal of time, the law is ever evolving. So I'm always learning new things, and I love that about the law. But I do think that that's surprising. That a lot of times you'll learn new things, and it's constant. That there's always something to learn.
Dynamic.
Yes.
What experience do you already have in higher courts? You mentioned it briefly.
Sure. So I've practiced, again, even though I'm a magistrate in the municipal court, I'm running for the common pleas court. I've practiced there for 10 years. I've handled felony matters, even all the way up to murder. So I've handled traffic cases all the way up to murder from the criminal end of things. I have a big appellate practice. So if somebody's dissatisfied with their trial court decision, then they can appeal to the Court of Appeals. I do a lot of that, and that's again my passion. I love the law, and when you get to that area, when you get to that stage of the game, you're arguing a lot about the nuances of the law, and I really like that. Yes. So I have a big practice in that regard, and then on 3 different occasions in the past 3 years, I've argued to the Ohio Supreme Court. So they don't take every case, they take a small percentage of cases, and you have to sort of entice them to take your case. So you have to petition them. And on all 3 times, it's been my petition that's gotten them to review the court's decision. So I'm really proud of that I have that experience that not a lot of attorneys do.
Okay. Why are you running for the position of common pleas judge in Lorain County?
So that's the $1 million question, right? I feel like I've done a lot as far as practicing before the courts, and particularly the common pleas bench.
Okay.
The judiciary is unique because we have age limitations. The seat that I'm running for, the judge has an age is age limited, so he cannot run again because the law requires that he must retire.
Okay.
And again, I think that opens an opportunity for a younger face of the judiciary.
Right.
And I have the experience in practicing there, and I think that I've have some ideas for some changes procedurally that we can implement to make the court a better place.
Okay. To what division would you be assigned in the Court of Common Pleas?
So it would be the general division, which generally we say is felony criminal cases and high dollar civil cases. There's a lot of other things, protection orders, things of that nature, but generally those are the things that we're talking about, as opposed to the municipal court, which handles misdemeanors and the lower dollar civil matters.
Okay. What experience, education prepared you for being a common pleas judge? And you already talked about that a little bit.
Sure. So again, I think my experience in practicing there, my experience in being a judicial officer already, and having that neutral position where that I handle now these cases, and although it's not in the same court, I do have that experience as a judicial officer, and my education. Again, I'm a lawyer, but I also have taken that what I believe is sort of to the next level in that I have spent a lot of time educating myself even after law school. That's not where it ends for me. I think you should study the law and be current on what the trends are, and that's something that I have done.
Okay. What matters would you preside over as a common pleas judge?
Again, we're talking felony criminal matters and the high dollar civil matters. I should also say that the magistrates they cannot hear, when I was talking about the differences there, magistrates cannot hear felony jury trials. And so that's something that the judges handle. They usually also handle the trials that are civil trials, although in our courts, the judges will have a magistrate, and they do handle a lot of this civil docket, although I intend to be active in it. So mainly we're talking a lot. I anticipate that I'd probably preside over a good deal of jury trials.
Now, in the civil matters, I know there's a dollar limit, isn't there?
Right. The Common Pleas Division actually has a pretty wide authority, so there is a limit on the municipal, but on the Common Pleas, it has a wide authority. Although usually we're talking tens of thousands of dollars.
Okay. What are the qualities that a good Common Pleas judge has?
Well, again, I think fair, neutral, and the ability to know the law and to apply it fairly and neutrally.
Okay. What pleas and penalties occur in the common pleas court?
So the common pleas court is somewhat unique in that with misdemeanors and in the municipal court, there's not the potential for prison. So I don't know that a lot of people know the difference between jail and prison. Our jail, and there's been a lot of talk about our jail because it's likely to be on the ballot in the future, that it's in poor condition, and there's a lot of talk about how are we going to fund this new jail. So our local jail the jails are really mainly supposed to be temporary housing.
Right.
For people who are waiting their trials or people who have been sentenced to their misdemeanor offenses. The felonies and in the common pleas division, there's a potential for prison. So prison, we're talking, you could be all over the state, but of course we have both Lorain County Correctional Facility and Grafton Correctional, both in Grafton, right next to each other. So what's unique about, you asked about the penalties in common pleas court, there's the potential of prison. So they are very serious matters.
Okay. Change gears a little bit on you is, can judges advocate for changes in the judicial system?
I believe so. And again, when you ask me why I'm running, I think that there is this need for change. Now, can they advocate for change procedurally? Yes. There are a lot of procedural changes that I would make. For example, efficiency of the docket. So when we're talking about moving cases along, that's one of the complaints as a practicing attorney I hear from my clients, because when you have a very serious matter, whether it be civil and you're worried about money and what's this going to cost me, or criminal and you're worried about your freedom, that's a cloud over your head that can't go away until that case is concluded.
Right.
Similarly, if you're a victim of a crime and you're concerned about maybe your safety or repayment of some wrong that you have done, that's also something that's going to continue to be on your mind. So as far as changes go, I think that judges can make procedural changes. Now, again, I think that judges need to be neutral and fair. So as far as changes to the law itself, that's really more of a legislature concern, and I don't think it's appropriate to legislate from the bench, but I think it is appropriate to make procedural changes.
Okay. Should judges continue to be elected, or should judges be chosen in some other way?
I was at an event last night and somebody asked me a very similar question, and I don't know the answer. I think that there are advantages and disadvantages. The same could be said for the party affiliation on the ballot. People have asked that. And it's a hot topic issue, I think, as far as appointed and, or elected. The appointments, to federal court, there's definitely some disadvantages. It tends to be people who are very politically connected. And in federal court, it's a lifetime appointment. So there are disadvantages to that. Of course, there's also disadvantages to an elected official.
Yeah.
Luckily, in Ohio, we have 6-year terms for our common pleas judges, so it's not a constant election cycle. So I don't know the answer. There's advantages and disadvantages to both ways. There's no perfect solution to that.
Okay. What is the Lorain County Recovery Court?
Sure. So I sit as the defense attorney, and I have since 2018 on the Lorain County Recovery Court, which is sort of a fancy name for our drug treatment court.
Okay.
And it's a specialized docket. And what's interesting about this race is that both John and Jim Raldi, Judge John and Judge Jim, are retiring at the end of this year. Both of their seats are open. And Judge Jim Raldi handles the mental health docket, and Judge John Raldi handles the recovery court, which is more drug treatment based. And these are specialized dockets. Our drug court is funded almost entirely by state and federal dollars. There's the potential that goes away. So it's not local dollars, and they're funding additional probation officers They're funding additional drug testing, additional programming,
Right.
sober living facilities, and it's a really, really important program. We meet as a team. We call ourselves a team, and we are, myself as the defense attorney, a prosecutor, the judge, treatment providers, and probation. And we talk about each person who's in our program on an individualized basis. So where they're living, what they're doing, they have a very high level of accountability, which is giving them the best success rate to stay sober for a long-term basis. And quite frankly, we have a lower recidivism rate, meaning we don't have people reoffending at the same rate as regular
Good.
probation.
Yeah.
And something I'm also really proud of is just last week we had our 14th drug-free baby born in the recovery court. So I do think we're making a difference on the future of our county as well. And it's something that I would like to continue to do. I've also sat in the Elyria Municipal Recovery Court program as a magistrate. So I filled in when the judge has been out of town or at a conference. And I've had the opportunity, instead of being the defense attorney, to be the judge. And I find it really rewarding.
Okay. It sounds like it. What have you learned about dealing with illicit drug sale and use crimes?
So this question is interesting because I think when most people think about sale offenses, and when we first started the recovery court criteria, we didn't want anyone who was a trafficker because we felt like they may try to traffic to people in the program. But what we've done is we've sort of broadened our criteria to look at it on a case-by-case basis, because what we see is a lot of people who are using drugs are also, selling for their own purpose.
Okay.
And what they say is most people who are drug users are actually human trafficked because they're doing some sort of favor in order to meet their drug habit, whether that's selling drugs or otherwise. So what I've learned is, again, I think that the best way to deal with these issues is to provide the resources that are needed in order to get the users help they need. Now, there are certainly circumstances where the traffickers are selling large amounts of drugs and they need to be punished appropriately.
Okay. Now, this goes along with that. Are there more successful alternative approaches to dealing with drug violations?
Again, I'm a huge advocate of the recovery court,
Right.
Our drug treatment court, and the reason is that it's accountability. So I sort of compare it, and this is a terrible comparison because drug addiction is not something that can be compared, but I think for those who don't have an addiction, the best way I can compare it is sort of when you're losing weight and you do a really good job, and you lose a certain amount of weight, and then at some point you see a cupcake, and then it kind of spirals out of control. But it's the accountability that is going to keep you. I mean, people even have these weight loss accountability groups and exercise groups. And that's for
Helpful.
a team atmosphere to be held accountable. And that's what we try to replicate in the recovery court, is to build that sober support, and we call sober capital. And so I think that is our best bet. And we've had a lot of really good success stories. Individuals who are doing really well, a gentleman who started his own sober support, housing in Lorain County, who was a participant in our program. So these are people who are giving back to the community and remaining sober.
Okay. Change gears a little bit more. Are victims' and accusers' rights balanced under the law?
So the victims' rights were sort of embedded in our Constitution in a recent constitutional amendment with Marcy's Law. I say recent, but it's been many years now. And what that provides for is notification of victims.
Okay.
And so what you'll see a lot of times is now judges are ensuring that the prosecutors, who are usually the advocates for the victims, are consulting with those victims. And a lot of times they were, but it's placing a little bit more on the judges to ensure that their voice is heard, or at least that they're notified of various hearings. And a lot of that ultimately lies in the prosecutor's office to notify them and make sure that their voice is heard.
Okay, so that really restores the balance.
Well, I think there is always, a balancing act there, because you certainly have to balance the rights of the accused, and the rights of the victims. So there is always that balancing act, but the constitutional amendment did provide a lot more protection for victims.
Okay. Do viable alternatives exist for cash bail?
Yes. So a lot of states have gone away with cash bail altogether. And what they do is they provide a little bit more either treatment, or they have a little bit more requirements. So if you're going to be out, you're going to either be on a GPS, an alcohol monitor, some sort of treatment. We have in Lorain County, we call it CSR, Court Supervised Release. And it's similar to probation in that people who are out on bond check in with a probation officer while they're awaiting bond, or while they're waiting their trial. So there are alternatives to cash bond that are already in play, and there's also the option for all of those things that I mentioned, the GPS monitors,
Yeah, right.
and CSR and all of that in combination with a certain amount of cash bond. So a lot of judges will do that as well, maybe set a cash bond with another component. Certainly in a case where there's some serious allegations with another individual, sometimes judges will restrict people from being in that area where that person lives or works, and those are all things that can be implemented.
Okay. Does another off the wall question? Does punishment deter crime?
I would say accountability deters crime.
Okay.
And again, it depends on the crime that we're talking about. When I'm, again, talking about these drug cases, it's the accountability that's keeping people, consistent in their sobriety. When we're talking maybe the more serious and violent offenses, incarceration may be more appropriate. But I think accountability is the key there.
Okay.
And consistency, quite frankly. I think that that's something that I'm going to strive for, is to be consistent so that when somebody comes into my courtroom, they know what to expect. And I think that consistency and accountability is what's going to deter crime.
Sounds pretty wise to me. What advice would you give someone who aspires to be a judge?
Well, I think, networking within the legal community, within the greater community. I've spent the last 10 years, again, being involved in the Lorain County Bar Association, being involved in the legal community. Mm-hmm. I volunteer my time to teach classes to lawyers, to write articles for lawyers about the law. And I've done that in the community at large as well. So I sit on various boards, and I've been active in the community. And I think that that's important because our judges should know what the reality of our community is. And we should reflect their sentiments and, understand what the community is all about. So I think, somebody who wants to be a judge, get out there in the community, get out there and network. Again, we talked about my dad as a role model, and that's something that I learned from a very early age. My dad was always very active. Now, he was a home builder, but he was active in his associations. He was active in the community, always giving back to the community. And another thing I learned from a very young age, and something I would give advice to people who want to be a judge, is, again, keep learning. When I remember being a child and being in the car, and at the time it was, video tapes, a tape player, and my dad would get these continuing education classes,
okay,
or classes on the trends in home building. And he was very big into energy efficiency homes. So, and he built a lot of 55 and older community homes, which weren't popular at the time. But he would stay up to date on those trends and what was happening, and we would listen to these tapes, and I was so bored as a child doing that. But now I realize that that was his way of staying on top of his industry. And I find myself sometimes listening to podcasts, and my children in the back seat are saying,
Turn that off.
why are we listening to this? And it takes me back to my childhood. But being a constant student of the law.
Okay. How are you campaigning now?
I am getting out there again into the community. Last night I was at 3 different events. I try to get out there, meet as many people as I can. I love to talk to people. I love to hear what they have to say about the justice system. And that's my main thing. I'm on social media, but I really like to interact with people. So I try to find as many events as I can go to. I'm going tonight to various events. My children, like I said, I have an 8, 6, and 2-year-old, all boys, and they love the pancake breakfast. Pancakes are definitely a
plus.
favorite.
Yeah.
Yes, so they tag along with me, and we make it a family affair. But I love getting out in the community and meeting people.
Okay. How can someone get in touch with you?
Sure. So I have a Facebook page. Bremke for Judge, and I also have, it's facebook.com/Bremke for Judge, BremkeForJudge.com, and you can always feel free to reach me, learn more about me there, reach out to me on those platforms, or BremkeForJudge@gmail.com, and you can always reach me on any of those.
Okay. Those addresses and the website address will appear on the bottom of the screen, so the viewers can see those.
Absolutely.
Okay. How can Avon Lakers and others support your efforts? Do you need volunteers?
Absolutely. We can always use volunteers. Host events at their homes, or invite me to the events that you're having. Like I said, I love to get into the community. I have ways to sign up to volunteer on my website. We're getting signs out there. There's always there's a link on my page to sign up for a sign for your home, if it allows, and or just spread the word. The biggest thing about the digital age is it's very easy to share a post or send an email and reach a lot of people. So I'm always grateful for the support.
Okay. In summary, what is making sense to you and what doesn't?
Well, I think what makes it's hard to say what makes sense these days, right? It's easier to
That's
answer
why
what
I asked the
doesn't make
question,
sense, right? What makes sense for me as far as the justice system goes is that we have a lot of really good programs. Like I said, the recovery court, the mental health court, and we're working towards these really great things. But at the same time, we have an opportunity now with 2 retiring judges to progress the system even further. And I think that I'm the person that can do that. I think that what doesn't make sense is to stay stagnant in what we're doing. And I think that I can be fair, I can be impartial, and that's what I'm committed to doing. So I thank you guys for having me.
Okay. Well, being on this show will spread the word,
Absolutely.
I hope. And I think the voters of Lorain County should be grateful that someone of your caliber will now aspire to be a judge in the Court of Common Pleas.
Thank you.
I wish you good luck. And,
Thank you.
I think we should be grateful that you're running and that you're going to put out the effort.
Thank you.
Okay. And I want to thank you for watching this show. If you'd like to give us feedback or comments, please, our email addresses are on the bottom of the screen. Please, if you would like to be on the show, or you have people that you know who are interesting people, please send us their contact information. And remember, seatbelts save lives.
The preceding program was presented to you by a community producer. The statements, views, and opinions expressed were not necessarily those of ALC TV or the City of Avon Lake.